Hello everybody, it's the Historical Gamer once again, and today we are going to be playing a new game which is currently in early access on Steam. It's only actually $4.99, so it's pretty cheap in terms of the cost. It's called Cauldrons of War, Eastern Front, 1941, Barbarossa and Beyond. Currently the game is only Barbarossa up through the early Soviet counterattacks of late 1941 and early 42. The game runs through January of 1942. It doesn't allow you to fight any of the Eastern Front beyond that period. But essentially it starts with the German invasion of Russia through to the winter Soviet counterattacks in the early month of, or in January of 1942, and that's where the game ends. And so as the Germans, your objective in this game is to take key strategic points throughout the Soviet Union that would ensure your victory. So for example, you know, obviously Leningrad is an objective that you want to take. You get points for that. Moscow is another objective you want to take. You get points for that. You can get points for sort of sealing off the Baltic. You can get points for driving deep into the Ukraine and taking both Kiev and Rostov, Kiev and Kharkov, basically. You get extra points if you take Kharkov, like within a turn of your units approaching, which has like it symbolizes the Soviets would not be able to effectively evacuate their industry there, which gives you, some points in terms of victory. If you drive to Rostov, to like the gates of the Caucasus, it sets you up for a successful 42 campaign because you're further advanced. You're basically already on the border of the Caucasus, and so that's like more victory points. And obviously, as the Soviets, your objective is to stop the Germans and to turn them back and to not lose too much of the Soviet Union. So those are sort of your objectives as playing as either the Germans or the Soviets. It's a top level game. It's really, the idea is like you're a theater commander. You're almost like the supreme commander of all Allied forces, all German or Soviet forces. In this game, and you get certain key strategic decisions that influence the game on how you want to handle certain events. But I think it'll be easier to explain if we just jump in. So let's do that. We're going to play as the Germans. I played as them for about 2 or 3 hours last night. There's still a lot in this game I don't fully understand, but I do think that I've got a better grasp of what's going on playing as the Germans. 3 difficulty levels. Those were actually just recently added in the newest update for this game. Again, it's in early access. And then 3 different scenarios you can play. So you can play Operation Barbarossa, which starts the game in June of 1941 and runs through December of 41. I think it actually ends in the January turn is when it ends. You can play Operation Typhoon, which is just the drive on Moscow specifically. The fall and early winter drive on Moscow that ultimately failed to take the city, and then the Soviet counteroffensive at Moscow beginning in December of 41 and running through to January 7th of 41. So actually, if you play the Barbarossa campaign, it runs you through to the January 7th turn anyway. So this is sort of the grand campaign, and the rest of these are sort of subsets. We're going to go ahead with Operation Barbarossa because I think it's the most interesting. We're going to play on normal difficulty because I have not yet beaten this game. I've played it 3 times through. It's not a super long game, but I've played it 3 times through, and I've had varying levels of success, but I have not yet won. The furthest I got was a draw. So we'll see how we can do here tonight. Good to see you there, Charcoal and Korabo. All right, so here's your first intro about the scenario. Barbarossa, June 1941. In Berlin, the mood of the population is gloomy. While the war against England drags on, fresh fruits are becoming scarce in the stalls, and even beer is now limited. Soon all these little problems will quickly be forgotten because in the east, secretly the troops are occupying their combat positions for the most exciting, that might be the wrong word, of crusades. Ugh. Playing as the Germans, that makes me feel dirty with any of that kind of positivity, but in any event. In a few moments, Operation Barbarossa will begin and the Wehrmacht will rush east to conquer the living spaces necessary for the German people. Yes, Lebensraum. Okay. Barbarossa, so here is the objective here. The enemy's caught completely off guard as waves of planes strafe and bomb its airfields. Along a 1,200-kilometer front, 6 armies, 4 armored groups sweep over an unprepared enemy. The following objectives will give you victory points. Moscow, 3 points. The Baltic, 3 points. Connect with the Finns at the Svir River, 1 point. Take Kiev and Kharkov, 2 points. Take Odessa and Sevastopol, 2 points. Take Rostov, 1 point, and annihilate the Red Army. Only 1 point, because the Russian hordes will always raise more troops. The game will end on January 1st, 1942. Historically, the Germans have won only 2 points. You will need at least 6 to win the game. So I'm guessing the Germans would have taken Odessa and Sevastopol, although I thought they took that later in 1942, so maybe not as... What would they... I mean, they got Kharkov, or they got Kiev. Did they get Kharkov historically in this period of time? Otherwise, I'm not sure what they would have accomplished, unless take Rostov and well, they didn't take Rostov that early. I don't know which ones the Germans got. Wish the game told me. All right, so the first of many choices that we get throughout the game. So as this is not the main screen for the game, but as the game unfolds, you'll get different events and things that pop up that you have to make decisions about that will influence the game. So you can see this particular item is the political commissars are the backbone of the Red Army. These fanatics are adversaries unlike the others. Well, I guess it's just saying they're very serious fighters. So in the fight again, blah, 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 blah. So basically we have to make a decision on how we want to hand Soviet commissars that we capture. So the Communist Party commissars. We can either shoot them, which will increase the barbarism of the campaign, which is something I'll talk about in a minute, or we can treat them like the others. I think we probably want to manage the barbarism to keep it a little bit lower. Basically, there's a value that goes up and down throughout the campaign called barbarism, which represents the sort of deterioration of the Eastern Front from a conventional military conflict into, the absolute horror show with all the racist connotations and all of that that it devolved into. And while that certainly was already apparent at the start of the campaign, I think it's more just representing the general intensity of the campaign as it goes on. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and treat them like the others. I don't want to create a sense within the Soviet forces of more fanatical, heroic, defensive mindset for them. I want them to be more likely to surrender. I don't want them to think, to fall into the propaganda that the Germans are going to kill them all if they don't fight to the last, because at least in my case, as leading the German forces, I won't. All right, so after considering it very seriously, we ultimately didn't sign the Kommissar Befehl. I'm assuming it was historically signed. Fear that this order will push the enemy to massacre our captured soldiers in retaliation weighed heavily on the decision. Let's hope that this weakness will not turn against us. Okay, so that's the first decision we make. Now we are going to be shown the general campaign map of this game. So you can see this is a map of Eastern Europe. This is the Soviet borders on June 22nd of 1941. You can see there are 4 army groups at our disposal here. We've got Northern Army Group, Center Group, Southern Group, and the Romanian Front. We can zoom in or out with our mouse wheel. The Finns will come in on the war eventually, but right now they're not fighting. And you can see the Soviet boundaries here. I'm not sure why Sweden looks like it's part of the Soviet Union based on that color code, but it does kind of look like that. On the left side of the map, or on sort of the general controls of the screen, you can zoom in or out with the plus minus. You can also use your mouse wheel. You can also change, focus to either look at the Finnish front or the European front with a click of that button. You can turn cities on or off. You can turn weather reports on or off, which right now there's no weather. You can turn the army groups on or off. You can turn the objectives or the command points on or off. And then you can change the color or appearance of the map. So you can change it to be... these aren't super high quality maps. I guess one thing I would say would be kind of cool is if the game... this feels a little period-esque, almost like a 1940s documentary in terms of the quality. But I would like to see them upgrade the quality of the maps as this goes through early access. Okay, so this is the first turn. It is June 22nd, 1941. The barbarity of the campaign is 0 over here. Actually, if we go to... Does it explain that anywhere? I guess not. Oh, question mark. So barbarity here. We can get the right up here. With each level of barbarity, the Soviet armies gain a bonus. The barbarity score also directly influences the chance of seeing partisans appear. Barbarity scores of 15, the Soviet armies less easily lose their cohesion point. Barbarity. So this is basically as the Germans, then you always want to tamp down on the barbarity. You don't want the barbarity to go up then, because the Soviet armies will fight way more effectively if you allow that to go up. So real quick here, you can see this is the overall map. It's a little bit difficult to explain. You can see the different fronts. You can see the Soviets have some troops in reserve. The 22E, which is the 22nd Army, apparently is in reserve of the Northwest Front. The Western Front has 3 Soviet units, the 13th Army, the 47th Corps, and the 13th Mechanized Corps. All the units that I'm seeing here, I believe, are just the reserve units when you click on the headquarters, because when you click on the German army groups, you can see these units are actually in reserve. They're not assigned to any particular campaign. These guys are all currently in reserve. If you want to play the game, which obviously we've been going for a while now, so we should probably jump in to play the game here, we are going to click on these different arrows. So this is a different kind of a war game. Basically, if you want to fight, what you do is you are given predefined operations based off of, I believe, the historical operations during Operation Barbarossa. And in order to fight, you click on one of these arrows. So this arrow here, moving from north from Army Group North, is Army Group North's operation. This double envelopment in the center of the map near Army Group Center is assigned to Army Group Center. I'm assuming the boldness around these icons represents it's the primary objective. It's also executing a Kessel or a pincer movement to surround the bulk of the Russian forces near the border in a pocket so they can be more easily destroyed. South of them, you've got Army Group South advancing to protect the flank of Army Group Center. And on the Romanian front, currently it looks like the forces are settled in a defensive position with no offensive operations currently underway. Each army group has a certain number of command points that they're given each turn. In the case of the 3 German army groups here, you've got 5 command points, which represents actions that you can take during a given turn. The Romanians have 3. If we start with Army Group North and we click on it, we will see some information. These are the units that are currently assigned to the Baltic Offensive. The Baltic Offensive is currently 0% complete. When it gets to 100% complete, this arrow will go away, and then you'll start another operation further inside Russia. So we've got 3 German units. We've got the 18th Army, the 16th Army, and the 4th Panzergruppen, all assigned to this Army Group North's Baltic Offensive. Army Group North also has 3 units, the 23rd Corps, the Security 101 Corps, and the Police Regiment of SS North, all in reserve. These units are in reserve for Army Group North. We can assign them to the Baltic Offensive, which then they will join those units that we just saw launching that offensive. It will cost 1 point to assign them. We can rest them, which helps them regain equipment and other things like that. Also costs a command point. We can assign them to Heergruppe Mittel, which is Army Group Center's Kessel operation. That will cost fuel, and it will also cost 1 command point. Or we can click on Actions Wiki, which I think pulls up like a Wikipedia page or something like that. So those are our options with those units in reserve. Let's go back to Army Group North's strike. You can see here the Baltic Offensive is beyond the Niemen River, extend the Baltic states. The objective of this offensive is to break through to the Russian city of Pskov, liberating the Baltic states from the Soviet yoke, opening the Leningrad route and depriving the Soviet fleet of their precious ports on the Baltic. The Swedish iron would thus arrive to Germany without disturbances. So you can see here, we get different information on the screen, but that's the objective of the operation. You can see there's a river here, so defenses here are based on the natural obstacle of a river. It's necessary to establish a bridgehead beyond the river to be able to continue the operation. So the river can slow you down. It is assigned to Army Group North, which by clicking on that, we just went back to where we were already looking previously. And you can see there's some information down here on the bottom. So the rail capacity of this section is 3 out of 3. That means there can be, I'm not really entirely sure what that means, but basically it indicates, the railway capacity indicates the number of armies which can receive an automatic supply each week whenever the weather conditions allow. Isolated or surrounded units cannot, however, benefit from it. You also have trucks. These are the number of trucks assigned to this operation. There are 75. Trucks are used to provide supply to units that are, I believe, not on the rail lines. It also, in fact, affects morale. We've got 8 aircraft here. That represents our ability to take control of the skies. Currently, they're disputed. So if we click up here, you can see air superiority is disputed. Having air superiority makes certain air missions possible or easier while making things more difficult for your opponent. My experience so far is that air superiority seems mostly important in terms of air resupply missions. You also have tanks that are currently in reserve for this army. There are none. You have artillery, and you have infantry and trucks that are all currently in reserve, I guess, to be able to be assigned to forward troops. Actually, no, this is infantry down here. I don't know why there's like some typo or bug where it's saying both of these are trucks. They're not both trucks. One of these is infantry, artillery, and tanks. So what can we do? First off, the skies in this operation are disputed. I want to change that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on one of these Soviet units. You can see the NKVD Border Guards, the Baltic Fortified Regions, the 8th Army, the 27th Army, which is currently in reserve. That's what this yellow arrow means. The 11th Army, and then the 3rd and 12th Mechanized Corps. I want to take air superiority here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to choose a Airfield Attack, which is going to use 5 aircraft to bomb Soviet aircraft on the ground on this turn. So I do that, and you can see here, air attacks occur. It gives you a description of what the air attacks are, and you can see we destroyed 4 Soviet planes on the ground. It cost 1 command point up here. The skies are still disputed, but their reserve of aircraft is down to 4. Now I'm going to go ahead and use another command point to launch air superiority, which is going to gain, basically running fighter sweeps to gain control of the skies. You can see up here it now says air superiority is on the Axis side. We lost 1 aircraft. They lost 3. So with that being said, now you can see our aircraft total down here is down to 0. So we've used all 8 aircraft that we had assigned to our operation this turn. And that's what occurred there. Now we have 3 command points left to move this operation forward. So, Panzergruppen 4, 16th Army, and 18th Army. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do a breakthrough. Now, sometimes you have a Blitzkrieg option, which allows you to use aircraft in support of your offensive. I don't have that because I used all my aircraft gaining air superiority. So I'm going to use a breakthrough operation. You can see it's going to use 1 command point, 1 ammunition point, 1 fuel point. If I click on the 4th Panzergruppen, you get information about the unit. So this unit has 6 tanks, 2 artillery pieces, 20 trucks, and 5 infantry. Its command leader is a 5-star leader, which means he's a very effective commander. That's the general skills. He's the pinnacle of military competence. And then the cohesion and experience of the unit, it's kind of like morale and sort of ability to effectively attack. Down here in the bottom, you've got fuel and ammunition. You can use ammunition up by shelling enemy forces. You can use ammunition up by attacking. You can use fuel by moving. So we're going to do a breakthrough operation here. And you can see immediately this unit attacked this Soviet unit down here, and you get a little bit of a write-up here. So many soldiers have surrendered, and impressive columns of prisoners are being driven to makeshift camp. The 11th Soviet Army ceases to exist. So the 11th Army over here ceases to exist. I didn't read the rest of it, but it gave a write-up of like what was destroyed. It also says here 25% progress, so you can see the operation is now a quarter done. We're a quarter of the way to this operation. And the map also, if you zoom in and you can move around the map by double-clicking, you can see the map also kind of starts to change. You can see that front line looks like it's been pushed back a bit. That represents the fact that we've made 25% progress in the Baltic Offensive. Okay, so now this armored group has broken out, and I can reversed front. I don't really know what that means, but I can do it. Currently, this armored unit is isolated and has exposed flanks. So if I reverse my front, it gets rid of the isolated element. So it does still have open flanks, but it's no longer isolated, which should help with resupply at the end of the turn. So that variable up here of exposed flanks is gone. You can see this reversed front ended up heavily damaging the Soviet 12th Mechanized Corps. It didn't destroy it, but it's at least badly damaged. You can see Soviet losses down here, 3 tanks, 2 infantry, 3 cohesion. We didn't make any progress, though, because basically what we were doing is securing our position and turning on units that were between us and our friendly units, so it didn't actually end up advancing the front line any further. So we've got 1 command point left. The armored unit really can't move anymore. We've used all of our supply. We've used almost all of our fuel. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and we'll look for our best infantry unit here. I'm going to go with these guys. They've got 8 infantry units. They've also got 1 tank and 6 artillery. So I'm going to go ahead and launch an assault with these guys on the Soviet positions. And you can see here we destroyed the NKVD border guards. They ceased to exist. We captured 1 enemy truck, destroyed 1 artillery, 3 infantry, 4 cohesion, made 7% more progress toward the objective, and we're up to 32% toward the objective. So you can see here, we didn't even use the 18th Army, but we've used up all of our command points at this point in time. So we made progress, 32% there on the first turn, probably not as much as I should have made on the first turn. I'm wondering if I shouldn't have gone quite so heavy on the air superiority, and if maybe that was a mistake. Army Group Center, we're going to do things a little bit differently. I'm not going to bother with the air superiority, but I am going to go ahead and try and attack the airfields on the ground. So I will use 1 command point and 5 aircraft. Actually, wait, how many do I have here? I have 8 aircraft. Blitz uses 2, so 2 and 2, that would be 4. So I need to leave 4 left if I want to use Blitz for both my armies, or my armored units. So I think what I'm actually going to do is, instead of you doing an air attack on the airfields, which destroys a lot more enemy aircraft, I'm just going to go ahead and take air superiority over. We destroyed 3 Soviet planes. 1 Axis plane was lost. We gained air superiority now. So the Soviets can do that as well on their own turn, and they probably will have aircraft to counter as well, because I didn't destroy like 5 or 6 on the ground. But I at least temporarily have gained air superiority, which should prevent the Soviets from bombing my tanks or anything like that. Super Chacho, thank you very much for the resub. Appreciate it. Stidhammer83, thanks for the follow. Lord Speed37, thank you for the follow. Sky Skull 900, oh, that was 4 hours ago, but thank you for the follow if you're around. Okay, so yeah. All right, so now let's get underway. So you can see a bunch of different options. We have the breakthrough option, which I think is what we had before on the other front, but we're going to use Blitzkrieg instead. And you can see what Blitzkrieg is going to do is it's going to use 1 command point, 1 fuel, 1 ammo, but it's also going to use 2 aircraft. So we're going to be using tactical aircraft in support of our operation. We'll go ahead and hit that. You can see here, again, a general description of what happened. The 6th Cavalry ceases to exist, so we destroyed the 6th Cavalry. You can see the Soviet Central Force has a lot more troops around, although 4 of the units are in reserve. But we did wipe out the 6th Cav, which I don't even see on here. Usually it's up there somewhere. And then we also captured fuel, so we get +1 to refueling for that armored unit. And the Soviets lose 1 tank, 2 infantry, and 5 cohesion. We also gain 28% of that operation. So now the 3rd Panzergruppen is also going to do a Blitzkrieg attack, and you can see another 35% of our way to the objective. We're up to 63%. We also routed the 10th Army. They're not destroyed, but we did rout them, destroying 3 artillery units, 7 infantry, and 6 cohesion. So you can see both of these armored units are now isolated. We can either choose to reverse front them, or we can assault with our infantry. I think what I'm going to do is I don't want them to suffer at the hands of a Soviet counterattack, so I'm going to reverse front. That'll get rid of the isolated. We also routed the 6th Mechanized Corps here, destroyed 1 more infantry, 3 more cohesion on the Soviets' part. And then we'll reverse front for this armored unit. Now, actually, we'll leave one of those armored units out there isolated. I'm going to go ahead and attack with these guys. I've got 12 infantry, 10 artillery, 2 tank units. We'll go ahead and assault with them. We'll get 7% more. We're up to 70%. The Western District Fortified region has ceased to exist. You can see the skull over here for this unit wiped out. 1 more infantry unit, 5 more cohesion. I probably would have done more damage to reverse front for that armored unit, but we made further progress toward our objective. So you can see here in the Army Group Center, the map is expanding accordingly, and we're making progress there. Meanwhile, the Southern Front, I know the Soviets have a lot of aircraft, so I'm actually going to go with an airfield attack. I also only have 1 armored unit, so there's not as much of a reason to do air superior, or to save as many aircraft for Blitzkrieg attacks, because I can only do 1. So we're going to do a airfield attack here. And you can see here we destroyed 8 Soviet planes on the ground. They have a lot more aircraft in this theater on the ground, I believe. I also did save enough aircraft to do a Blitzkrieg attack with my armored unit, so we're going to do that. You can see here the 6th Army is routed, 29% toward our objective. And then we're also going to reverse front to get rid of that isolation, destroy 3 more Soviet tanks, 3 cohesion. So you can see 29% of the way there. We've got 2 command points left, and really I'm just going to hit them with my infantry here at this point. I don't have enough other armored units. There is a Slovak Corps that's in reserve, but I'm just going to go ahead and assault them at this point. You can also shell, by the way, which does a fair bit of damage to the enemy also. But we're going to do assaults because I'm trying to get as much progress toward this operation to get toward Kiev as I can. You can see we wiped out the 6th Soviet Army. We also captured 3 of their trucks, which gets added to our total. Make 7% more progress there. We'll do another assault here. We didn't destroy anything. This was a much less effective attack. I probably would have been better off with an artillery bombardment. But 3 more cohesion points, 1 infantry unit, and 1% toward the operation. So the first week of combat almost completed. We still have the Romanian front here, so we'll click on the front down here. You can see we have the 4th Romanian Army in reserve. The 11th Romanian Army is really the only really strong Romanian force that has 11 infantry, but also, unlike most armies, it has 3 armored vehicles as well, because they have no separate armored units on this front. So what I'm going to do here is I am going to launch an airfield attack. We'll destroy 2 aircraft on the ground, so they don't actually have that many aircraft on the ground in this theater. Then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to... I have to tell my troops what I want them to do if I want them to attack. Or I could just shell them. What happens if we shell them? 1 infantry loss from artillery fire. Second artillery fire does nothing. So we don't even attack on the southern front. They've got a lot of mechanized troops down there. I don't have a very strong force on the Romanian front. My hope is that we'll just keep the defensive lines and hope they shift troops north, because they likely will. And that's the first turn. So the results are not predetermined, I don't think, Coffee. I think there's like math that goes on behind the scenes that determines, like, based on what you do, based on the number of equipment the enemy has, all these other variables go into some element of a randomized attack, because it's not all predefined or predetermined. So with that being said, that is the end of the first turn of June 29th, 1941. Barbarity still at 0. Our troops are having quite a bit of success in their operations. Let's hit next turn and see what the Soviets do to us. Okay, so we get a pop-up here that comes up, and we have another strategic decision to make. So, I don't know how to pronounce this word, but essentially when our troops entered Kaunas, the city had already been liberated by Lithuanian partisans. The later seized large depots of Soviet small arms and began ferocious purge of their own Jewish community and collaborators. Our troops were welcomed as liberators, but the situation in the city is out of control as killings, lootings, and burnings occur in the streets of the city. The commander, after initial confusion, must react. So we now have to make a decision. Disarm the madmen and restore order by violence if necessary. Integrate the partisans into our army, or let the Einsatz Commando take over. Now, these guys are bad. The Einsatz Commandos would probably kill all the partisans because they're not Germans. So we don't want to do that because that'll increase the barbarity of the campaign. We can either choose to integrate the partisans into our army, which then gives them as a unit that we can use in our command, or we can take the weapons from them. I think I'm going to take the weapons from them. The partisan unit is relatively weak. It's like a 1-1, so I'm in terms of infantry strength. So I'm going to go ahead and disarm them, and but the violence would probably drive barbarity as well. Let's integrate them into our army. It does increase barbarity by 2, maybe because we don't crack down on the violence, but we do get an auxiliary army added to the Baltic front. Okay. All right, so we also are seeing a pogrom start, so the Red Army evacuates Lviv. The population discovers with horror the extent of the crimes perpetrated by the NKVD. In the minds of the population and of the German troops who have just entered the city, there's no doubt that the Judo Bolsheviks should be punished, so they start a pogrom against Jews in this town. Which also increases barbarity to +1, and we get an auxiliary police unit available in Ukraine. All right, the 309th. So discipline is lacking on the 309th Police Battalion, whose drunk men... Is that the book I have? Ordinary Men? Or is that the 309th, or is that a different unit? In any event, the 309th Police Battalion, whose drunk men have started a pogrom on their own initiative in the town of Byalosk. Men of the 309th have spread through the Jewish quarter, raping, killing, and yeah, okay. So this is really driving home, obviously, the horror of the Russian front, and obviously the racial and sort of genocidal nature of the German invasion. So we have an option here. We either can discipline the soldiers, or we can silence the facts and cover up the death and destruction. I'm going to restore discipline, so it will give us a lower increase of barbarism, I think, than otherwise. We also have a cohesion penalty for the Security Corps, the 102nd Security Corps, which is a decent unit. It's in reserve in, I think, the Central Army Group, but it's not a great unit, and so I'd rather take a slight cohesion penalty for those guys. They're not even on the front lines right now. All right, one more item here. Or actually, I think we've got 2 more. So there's a whole bunch of these screens that keep coming up. Most turns you don't get this many, but it's the first turn. So basically, Finland's joining the war. It's a continuation war. They're going to war because they don't like the Soviets after the Winter War of 1939. Understandable. So Finnish armies are all against all fronts are activated. We essentially have 2 options at this point. We are now being asked if we want to launch a dual-pronged assault on Murmansk, which is the key Soviet port to leaving Lend-Lease, which matters later in the campaign, or if we just want to try and cut the rail track to the port. So we can choose to either open up 2 fronts in northern Finland or 1. I'm going to choose to open 2. I haven't done this before, but the operation that occurs in northern Finland to try and cut the railway line to Murmansk and limit the effectiveness of Lend-Lease just really doesn't materialize in any sort of beneficial way To me anyway, the Soviets are always too strong. So maybe if I can pick and choose my spots, I can have a little bit more success. So I'm going to go with 2 operations. It splits our forces and makes them weaker, but it also forces the Soviets to split their forces, and maybe we can have a good result there. Meanwhile, there's a little update telling us that the Soviet tanks are better than ours. That's unfortunate. Enemy tanks have a chance to be very effective when the quality of troops is at least veteran and the general level is at least 2. Chances of benefiting this bonus increase with each passing week. So that's just something to be aware of. All right, everybody, I'm going to go ahead and here and jump in and wrap this one up. This was taken from a live stream on my Twitch channel from just yesterday, actually. This was just the first turn of the game. I know there was a lot of sort of exposition and setting the stage. I'm sure some of you will complain about that, and I do apologize. But this is the first time I've ever played the game on stream. It's a very different type of game, and so, you know, in a game like this, when it's not always obvious why I'm doing what I'm doing and what's going on, I like to set that up accordingly. But we won't have to have that much exposition, and it'll be a lot more gameplay in the following episodes. So if the game looks interesting, and if this is something you want to see a little bit more of, and see a little bit more of just the raw gameplay, stick with the channel, and you'll see the next episode probably in the next day or 2. Or you can jump on over to my Twitch channel and watch the whole stream. It was about 2.5 hours long, and you can just watch it in one full setting. But that's going to do it for today. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. As always, leave your thoughts down below. Thanks for coming out, and until next time, this is the Historical Gamer saying, once again, thank you for watching, and until next time, I'm out.